Hey, hello, 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 hello. Welcome, folks. And hope you're having a wonderful afternoon. My name is Jason Hamilton. I'm the founder of Keep It Simple Financial Planning. And today we're going to be talking about two different Social Security strategies and two case studies that are going to go through a case where we have a married couple that might be having two different Social Security benefits that we are possibly planning for. And then we're going to look at a single case. So hopefully you find this interesting. And if you're anybody that is near the decision of Social Security, this is quite a big decision, and you really want to look at the variables that are going into this. It's not just a decision that should be made on its own on a separate island. So we welcome you to join us today and to hopefully enjoy this case study. If you're watching this while we're doing this live, please feel free. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those down below, and I'll be happy to get to those if I can right at the end. And then as well, if you'd like to let me know, what we like to start here with is gratitude, right? We are always trying to stay in gratitude and talk about what we are grateful for. We have people that watch this that are on all ends of the financial spectrum. We have people that have multiple millions of dollars, and then there's people that are just trying to squeak by, saving what they can today, and may have a lot less money. That's okay. What we're here for is to help you create and design a strategy that works for you, that helps you retire with the most confidence possible. And so we welcome you regardless of how much money you may or may not have, because at the end of the day, if you're near retirement, there's going to be a point where you're not going to want to work or you're not able to work. So what our goal is for you is to have a good plan, a good structure to your plan, and to put yourself in the best possible position to have a great retirement experience. So Social Security is, your Social Security timing strategy, I should say, is one of those variables that's going to come into play. So today we're going to walk through a couple case studies, like I said, and I hope you find these valuable. We were supposed to cover these a couple weeks ago and had the tech issue, and then we had Easter. So hope you all had a wonderful holiday, but I want to welcome you back. So without further ado, let's jump in here to start talking about some of our case studies today. All right, so let's see here. There we go. All right, and before we jump in, I have to let you know, as always, this is not meant to be specific financial advice, okay? Everything we talk about here is for educational purposes. I wanted to give you some good insight and some good knowledge, but please don't take anything I'm saying today to be gospel, that is exactly what you should do, because I truly believe that you should have an individualized, unique plan that helps you maximize all your personal variables. And we're all going to have some sort of variables that are similar. We may all have IRAs or Roth IRAs or Social Security or possibly pensions. But the way we put these puzzle pieces together, the way we structure them, can make such a huge difference depending on your exact situation. And so please, we recommend you get individualized consultation. But this should be hopefully enjoyable for you here, hopefully helpful. All right. So we're going to talk about today a couple different cases, okay? So our current cases are as follows. We have our first case, which is going to be a married couple, okay? So in this case with the married couple, we're going to have two separate Social Security benefits. The current income for the household is $170,000 pre-tax. The retirement goal is 64 for the main client, who's the higher earner, and 62 for the co-clients. Their current ages are 62, so the co-client wants to retire today. And in the first example, I'm going to cover, they have about $1 million saved, $1,020,000, and their estimated income need is $6,000 per month, okay? So I'm also going to do an example that has $250,000 less, so that those of you that may not have $1 million can get some use out of this, okay? So what we're looking at here, when we're looking at the base plan, okay? So right now we're just talking about the base plan. So I'm going to give you some different variables here we're going to go through. And so I've prepared a few different plans that have different structure around Social Security. To start, we're not going to have anything different regarding the income need. So let me drop down some of our action items here. So currently we have a $6,000 monthly income need. And this is the estimate the client came up with to assume that. We are going to start with them taking Social Security, 62 each. So when you see Social Security, we'll have 62 and 62, okay? Again, the primary retirement age is 64, co-client 62, okay? So what we see here is what's called a Monte Carlo analysis, okay? And the Monte Carlo analysis, what this tells us is it basically back tests 1,000 different scenarios and runs all kinds of different market conditions and tells us, hey, you know what? Out of 1,000 different possible historical scenarios, this plan out of 1,000 scenarios, 650 of them would have been successful. Okay, so that means there's a 35% chance here that this particular client would have to make an adjustment at some point. Doesn't mean they can't retire necessarily. 65 is not a horrible number, by the way. But it's probably lower than most people would like to have, but it's not a horrible number. It is definitely a number where if you had to retire today and we looked at this, and as long as you're willing to be conscious around your spending and possibly make adjustments if we needed to, this would be a reasonable number to say we can use. So, but it's not ideal. Okay, so I really want to improve on this number, and let me show you why. So when we look at a situation like this, as you can see here, let me take these off here. This is kind of the median trail of what this client is supposed to have with regarding to assets. The challenge we have here is at the end of the plan. Okay, so in this case, we have an expectation of life of 90 for each of the clients. You know, the average for men these days is about 85, 86, and the average for women is about 86, 87. So, 90 is a good way to plan, I think, to be a little bit conservative. But what we see here right at the end is a big drop off, okay, where potentially we could have a problem at the end of the plan. And what's coming in here is this particular client covering long-term care out of their own pocket. Okay, so we are planning for 2 years each of the primary and the co-client. The average stay for men is about 1.5 years. The average stay for women is about 2.5 years. And this is just a very basic cost, about I think $40,000 to $50,000 in today's dollars, extrapolated, or if we add an inflation factor on that until they're 88 to 90 for 2 years. So at the end here, it drops off pretty quickly, and this is why our level of confidence is probably lower than we like it to be. Right here, the 65. So another thing to really realize here is we have here a baseline, and so what we're looking at here is the client's income streams that they're going to need. So if you look along the way, they have some income while they're working, about 120, and then the first person retires down to 80. And then from here, they're going to have some saving withdrawal of about $45,000. And then Social Security is expected to cover about $37,000, $37,729 for this particular client. And again, let me remind you, this is the client taking, both clients drawing at 62, okay? So as we can see at the end, there's a big expense at the end. And this is the cost of long-term care for the client. So in this case, they're both 62. So this is both of them going in the same year. And the expectation in today's dollars, okay, would be about $120,000 inflated for the future. So this is a pretty big expense that most people I speak to that are looking to plan for retirement haven't really thought about. But when we see orange here, this means that things are looking good, okay? So if things are looking good, that's a beautiful thing. But what happens is if we have a situation where we have like a bad decade, okay? So for those of you that remember 2008, if you were invested 100% in the S&P 500, you would have gone from January 2000 to December 2009, and you would have lost about 9%. You would have a negative 9% return over that time. Okay, so a bad decade followed by slow growth can really cause a problem in retirement. So we want to make sure we're planning for that, and we're getting ahead of the game when it comes to looking at what could happen. One way to do that is through investment diversification. That's a wonderful way to do it. Another way is to increase your amount of guaranteed income, right? So looking at things like Social Security. You can also reduce expenses as another way. But there's so many variables when it comes to putting together a retirement plan. This is something that you should start with, but then you want to be willing to adjust and make transitions over time. So in this case, if we had a bad decade followed by slow growth, we would have a shortage for this particular client's retirement income plan of about $635,000. That doesn't look good, okay? So I don't like that very much. Another thing to think about is if we only had a 4% return average on our portfolio. So for those of you that like to have a lot of money in cash, okay, I'm seeing a ton of money, a ton of clients or potential clients that have a lot of money in cash. And cash can be very useful, but with the interest rates being so low today, with the amount of money we've printed, just about $6 trillion with more to come, it looks like, the value of cash is going to go down significantly. So if you have an overall portfolio return of an average of 4%, because you might have some investments in equities, some in bonds, and then a lot in cash, in this case too, it would come up short, okay? So this is not good. So what we have here for our baseline is about a 7% return. So if they get a 7% average return, then things are looking pretty good, okay? So here, we're going to go back to our probability. So a couple of things we can look at. when it comes to optimizing this particular client's plan is to say, hey, what if we were looking at delaying Social Security a little bit? Because even though you may have to spend a little bit early, you're going to have more guaranteed income later. And that's going to be very beneficial for you if you were to, essentially have a downturn in the market, because at least you have more guaranteed income from Social Security that's going to cover you. So what we want to do sometimes is start playing with some variables. So I have about 6 or 7 plans here mapped out that we can look at for just the Social Security option. Okay, there's other options that we can mess with the plan here when it comes to how much they spend, or maybe even when they retire, or the investment allocation as well. So in this case, let's say we changed just from 62 for both clients to retirement age. Okay, and if we did that, then in this case we go from a 65% to a 65%. So as you can see here, the ending assets are supposed to be about the same, 337, but we increased to 345. Essentially all we did there was we took the primary, instead of taking their benefit at 62, we taken it at 64, but the secondary is still taken at 62. So that's not great. Another thing we can look at here is what if we took one early, okay? So let's say the secondary client who had the lower income took their Social Security at 62, and then the second client took theirs at 67. Okay, well that gives us an improvement. We now go from 65 to 68. So again, this is not bad. This is definitely improving our situation here. But these are all things that we're adding to the potential success of our plan as we are looking at increasing the income over time. So again, 65 isn't bad necessarily, but if we can do better, then we want to do better. Another thing to look at here is, what if we took that same co-clients at 62, like we said, but we delayed the primary benefit until 70, okay? So remember, the primary is still going to retire at 64. Nothing's changed, about this primary client as far as the retirement date. The only thing we've decided to do is, instead of taking Social Security earlier, we're going to delay that second Social Security, which means that the income need is going to have to come out of our assets that we have saved. But even if we do that, because we're getting the higher second benefit, we're going to be increasing our probability of success by 4% and our net expected ending assets by about $40,000. Okay, so if you see 337 to 378. So that's a good thing. Okay, so things are moving the right direction. So there's some other variables here we can look at too. Let's say we did not, instead of taking the Social Security benefit for the secondary at 62, what if we took the secondary at full retirement age, which would be 67, and then the secondary at 70, like we were talking about before. Okay, so now we're moving up into the 70s. So this starts to look really good, and you have to remember, we are still planning to fund the retirement need out of their assets in the meantime. So this is even with a drawdown early on, because what's going to happen is we're going to have more guaranteed income later. So we're not going to need as much of the income as we did before to cover our basic needs. So for example, let's go back to the previous here. Okay, and in this case, we have 40.4% of our income that's stable. Okay, so that's our Social Security income. So if we go back to the case we were just looking at here, so one at full retirement and one at 70, we now go to 46% that's stable. Okay, so that's about a 15% increase, in stable income. So that's not bad. By the way, we're just looking at structuring a plan here, and in this case, the optimal will be taking at 70 and 70. So if we took both clients at 70, that would be the optimal, but a lot of people don't want to wait that long, and you may not need to. It's just when we're looking at optimizing a plan, we want to start with the ultimate optimal scenario, and then we like to work our way backwards to see what makes more sense. And then, by the way, these clients are currently 62. So if we're not thinking about taking Social Security until 70, well, this is going to be an annual decision we want to look at as well, by the way. Nothing is ever locked in stone, because these are just things that we want to start with a game plan. we want to start with a roadmap. But once we get our roadmap laid out, then year to year, we're going to look at things like tax policy. We're going to look at investment returns. We're going to look at actual spending. Because as I mentioned, this is the estimated need, okay? So this is what the client estimated their need. I do have a card in my back pocket here. This client is putting everything all in together that they think they might need in retirement. And so, we actually haven't done the full cash flow plan yet to figure out what their needs are. So keep that in mind. So, when we look at the difference between 65 to 75, and we're looking at about 100,000 in remaining assets. So 337 to 436 in today's dollars. That's another $100,000 that we can use to pay for things, right? So these are things that are important, but sometimes it's hard to see exactly what that means in real dollars that you might be getting from Social Security. So what I want to show you is here, what delaying Social Security could be worth to you, okay? And so one disclaimer I have to make is this is a straight line calculation, okay? I am estimating that Social Security, your benefit goes up by about 1.8% per year. The average long-term increase on Social Security is just around 2%, 2.5% depending on the time period. But this is a 1.8% increase per year, which if you delay Social Security, not only do you get your delayed credits, right? So it's about 5.75% each year before full retirement age, and then it's 8% each year after full retirement age. You're also going to get the increase in whatever the cost of living adjustment was. Okay, so it could be a pretty large increase. And when you compound that out over 90, in this case, if you were to look at the difference between taking both Social Security benefits at 62 versus age 70, and then both these clients living until 90, we're talking about $415,000 more estimated that you'll be receiving from Social Security. Again, that may seem high, and it may be high. When you're using straight line, it's very difficult to get accurate numbers over a 30-year time period. But even if it was half of that, okay, even if it was half of that, and we're talking $200,000, this is a big reason why the difference in strategy goes up so much between the Monte Carlo number of 65 to 75%, because we're going to get an additional $400,000 to cover our needs from Social Security. So what that means is the money that you would have used over this time period, after you claim Social Security, to make up the income need, that money is going to stay in your accounts and it's going to compound. And if you have that money inside Roth IRAs, for example, then that money is going to compound tax-free. So there's a lot of variables here when it comes to looking at a plan. So if you're looking at the difference between taking it early as possible versus 70 for both, it's about $415,000 estimated. If you look at the difference between taking it at full retirement age and then waiting till 70 and then the client's living until 90, we're looking at about $238,000, almost $239,000. So what does that really mean? So we can look here at when we're expected to break even, okay? So if we have a client, if we're looking at full retirement age versus taking it 70, our break even age is right about 80 in a couple months here. If we're going to look at taking as early as possible, well, now our break-even age came here right about 79 for this particular client. So these are all factors you want to bring into your decision, but I think people put too much weight on the break-even decision, and in all likelihood, you're going to break even if you live to the average age, right? A lot of people think the average age of living is 76, but that's actually false. That counts. That age is from birth. Okay, so that includes all infant mortality. If you're in your 60s, your average age is much more likely to be the 84 to 87 range. And if you're both 65, you and your spouse, there's a 51% chance that one of you is going to live to 91 or beyond. Okay, so that 76 age is not. That includes everybody from birth to death, and that includes infant mortality. But many people, this is not really the discussion we're going to have when you're talking about taking Social Security at 62. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to check here for questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop those in, and I will see if we have any here. So it looks like we got a couple questions here. Let's see. All right. So Mike asks, if you continue to work after drawing Social Security, then will any adjustment be made to your benefits, considering those additional years replacing your early years in your employment history? Okay. So that's a good question. So let's go to Mike's question. Let me see if I can pull it up here. All right, not coming through, but that's fine. So let's go here. Okay, so let's talk about Mike's question. Really good question. So Mike says, if you continue to work after drawing Social Security, Okay, so I'm assuming you're going to draw Social Security and maybe you draw it early. Okay, so if you draw Social Security at 62 and you continue working and you make more than $18,940, I believe it is, somewhere around there, right about $19,000, you're going to lose $1 of your Social Security benefit for every $2 you earn over that $18,900 and change. So keep that in mind, Mike. If you are talking about after your full retirement age, then you don't lose any of your Social Security benefit, you just pay taxes on it. So he says, if you continue to work after drawing Social Security, when will any adjustments to your benefit be made considering those additional years replacing the early years in your employment history? So generally, those are going to be made after you stop working, and then you will get a recalculation of that. So, technically, if you were to draw your Social Security at 62, and let's say you made $80,000 a year, and you didn't receive any of your monthly payments, well, your benefits would continue to recalculate. So then once you stopped, then you would get a higher benefit after you stopped working. And eventually it would work itself out to you get what you got back starting at 62 to whatever you stop working. But that may take a number of years. So in that case, Mike, I think it makes more sense to, if you claim early, you're not going to get the delayed credits. You don't get to keep those if you claim. So I would recommend that you delay your claiming until at least when you're going to stop working. And then from there, you will, if you continue working beyond that, you will get some credits there. So good question, though. So Michelle says, what if I invested my Social Security after I started collecting at age 63? That way, if I died before full retirement age, I could leave the investment to my kids. Michelle, that's a possibility, okay? If you think you're going to pass away within 4 years from 62 to 67, there's probably some other things going on with your health, and that might be something you want to take seriously. But the likelihood is, if you're healthy and you're 63, the likelihood is that you're going to live, at least average age, somewhere in that range. And so you may come out or you may not come out. So that is something to consider. But good question. Okay, so those are our questions for now. So let's go back to our case here. Let's go back to our case. All right. So how can we optimize this situation further? Okay. So one thing that many people don't have a good understanding of, and I'm alluding here to what I'm going to be talking about next week and probably for a little bit, is a very clear understanding of their cash flow needs. Okay. Because cash flow, what your income need is going to make a huge difference on your ability to retire and retire comfortably. Okay, so what if in this case the client here said, "Hey, Jason, we need $6,000 per month, so it's $72,000 per year to be comfortable, and we need that, and that's what we think our number is." Well, if I just took that number and said, "Okay," well then we may be looking at the scenarios right here. But what if I look at their number and then I look and I say, "Hey, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, you have $1,000 a month in here, so $12,000 a year that's going to vacations. Are you planning to spend that amount of money for the rest of your life, where we really should include this forever?" And most of the time, people are going to say, "No, but I really want to enjoy some vacations until at least 75." Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, by the way. So this is a case I've had, probably 100 times at this point. When you look at people's retirement budgets, a lot of times they'll include vacation in, but you're probably not going to do the same level of vacation or spending at 62 and 64 as you are going to do at 84, right? You're most likely going to slow that down later in the future. So what we try to do is let's segment the time period you might need different amounts of spending. So in that case, what we're going to do here is we're going to put in client's vacation goal, okay? So the vacation goal is going to be a separate cost that's only going to go for a specific period. So in this case, I have the vacation goal going from age 62 to age 75. So they can start, taking their vacations basically right away. But in this case, they're going to stop at 75. And then from there, we're going to tone down. We're going to go to have our normal spending. So if we did that and we lowered our spending, that's going to basically go forever. This is kind of our fixed spending that's not really going to change much besides inflation on the numbers. And then we add our vacation goal only until age 75. Well, look at what happens here. So in this case, now we go from a 75% to a 95%. Okay? So when I talk about cash flow planning and really understanding the different stages of your retirement, understanding that you need to have different inflation rates for different costs. For example, medical costs have gone up faster than general inflation. And the long-term care costs have gone up generally faster than medical costs and general inflation. So we want to make sure we're accounting for inflation on the different costs as well, but then also considering things that you may have different stages of when you're retiring, and you may not be spending the same amount of money all the way through. And so to get a really clear cash flow plan on these things can be very, very interesting. And when you map out your plan with all the micro details, you can see a huge impact in the difference of what it could turn out for your plan. So again, hopefully this was insightful for you, and I really hope you get your cash flow plan in place so that you can take a look and make sure that you're accounting for everything. Okay, so we're going to go back to what we had before. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to drop everything back to our base case. And then, like I said, I'm going to go over and I think I said I'm going to deduct $250,000 from the client assets to see how this would come out. Okay, so we're going to take the amount in their 401k down from 800 down to 550, and we're going to take a look at their plan. Okay, so in this case, this is for somebody who has a total of $870,000 now. We have $100,000 in cash. And then our 401k, Roth IRAs, and taxable accounts are all at a 60-40 allocation. And as you can see, it's very heavy pre-tax in the 401k, but that's the difference we're going to have in our current plan here. Okay. So in this case, now you can see that if we drop our, we keep everything else the same. Okay. Retire at 64 and 62, monthly retirement expense goal of $6,000, taking Social Security at 62 for both. Doesn't look so good, right? So 39% is quite a bit lower. If this is the case, then there's a chance, they could be looking at running out of money somewhere in the neighborhood. Let's see here, the median. Somewhere in the neighborhood, possibly, right at 87, 88, and then ending up the last year's a little bit early. So not great, not really where we want to be. So if we take a look at this case here, and we start looking at delaying Social Security. So let's just kind of jump over the first couple. And let's say we were going to instead do full retirement age and 70. Okay, we now go to a 42. And if we go 70-70 in this case, we're now at 43. So again, this doesn't look so good. Okay, so this is again where I would dive in and say, well, let's take a look at your spending. And let's see exactly what we have mapped out and figure out if it, do we really need to extend our retirements? Because we're talking about retiring at 62 and 64, okay? So we could possibly work longer, that's one way to do it. Or we can spend less, that's one way to do it. So let's say this case, let's say we actually looked at the numbers and it was $5,000 for our expenses. Oh, well, now we're at 83, and let's say we wanted to add the vacation goal in here of $12,000 for the first number of years. Well, now the plan looks like it's going to work, right? So, these are all things here that I want you to be considering when it comes to planning your retirement. And again, if you don't have, the ability to do analysis like this, reach out to us. We'd love to help you. But these are all things where you can really structure a retirement plan depending on the variables and still help you achieve your goals when you want to achieve them. But you might need to restructure the way you're looking at things or restructure the way you have your plan set up depending on what you're going to end up doing. So that's our single case. We can go into more detail there. And if you have further questions, you can reach out to me. But I'm going to jump over, that was our joint case. I apologize. That was a spouse and that was two spouses. So client and co-client. We're now going to jump over here to a single filer, okay? Because I know a lot of you out there are single and you're probably like, Jason, that's great, but I only have one Social Security benefit. So I need to make sure I get this right. So in this case, this is case study number 2. This current client is single. They are 58. Their current income is $70,000 per year, and the retirement goal is age 63. Okay, so their current amount of savings is $500,000, and then the income need is $3,000. Okay, so in this case, this client, like I said, their income needs $3,000. They want to retire at 63. So 63, doesn't look so good, right? 48, I don't really like that. It's a little bit lower than I really would want to have. I'm not saying you couldn't do it and make it work if you wanted to find a way to make it work, but we're already at $3,000 expense level. That's pretty low, and our Social Security here, what we're expecting up for this client is $2,500. So it's not a bad Social Security benefit. It's above average. But 63 is looking a little early, okay? So when I have a client like this and I'm looking at it and I say, okay, 48, it's a little bit low. It's like, well, let's see what it looks like if you work till 65. How do things look there? Okay. Well, now things are, looking a whole lot better at age 65. I like that. So 66 is not bad. But sometimes people will come to me and they're 58. Okay, remember, this person's 58 currently. And they are just dreading their job. They make good money. In this case, they're making $70,000. But they hate their job and they just want to retire because they're exhausted, they're tired, and they just want to be done with this job. Well, what happens sometimes is, we say, hey, well, are you open to part-time work? Ding, 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 okay? Part-time work in retirement can make a huge difference, okay? It can really make a big difference with how your overall retirement plan works out. But before we do that, let's take one step back. Because right now we're having this client retiring at 63 and taking Social Security at 63. It doesn't look so good if we have any sort of problem. We're going to run out of money very quickly. A lot of red here, not good. Even if we get 4%, still not great. We run out of money here about 82. Not good there. So, it's a little bit shaky, on this particular plan. So, what if we look at delaying Social Security to, let's say, full retirement age? If we're to do that, things look a little better. It's not horrible. 53 is not the end of the world. There's an argument to be made that you could retire with a 53% probability of success. It's just a 47% chance you're going to have to make an adjustment along the way if the market's down. But, this is not the end of the world. And if you're to wait till 70 for Social Security, well, now we're at 57. And again, remember, we have 2 years of long-term care planned in here as a expense that you're gonna take on out of your expenses. So if you don't go to long-term care, this could look a lot better as well. But let's just be safe and let's assume that that's the case. But maybe you see this, and maybe 57% really makes you uncomfortable. Okay, so what can we do here? We want to get out here at 63. 5 years is the max. That's all we want to do. That's the maximum we want to have. But let's say this client's willing to work part-time. Well, what if you're willing to add an additional $20,000 to your income until, I think we have it until 67, and you take Social Security a little bit later. So let's say we did Social Security at full retirement age of 67, and you go part-time. Let me add my part-time income back in here. Okay, so now we're looking pretty decent. If you want to add some vacation in here, and let's say you want to spend an extra $3,000 a year on vacation, it's starting to get decent. Okay, it's starting to get decent. What if we can take our $30,000 or $20,000 and move that to $30,000? Well, now we're starting to look okay. So for this client, if you really want to get out of there at 63, you can't do any more than 5 years. But you can earn an additional $30,000 doing some part-time work until full retirement age. That doesn't look so bad. And if we can delay our Social Security until 70, well, now we're looking pretty good. Okay, so, when it comes to structuring your retirement plan, as you can see, there are quite a few variables. There's quite a few things we need to get right. And there's so many little puzzle pieces we can help you optimize, and maybe you're somebody that has a pension. Maybe you have another income source. Maybe you have a small business that you can earn some income on the side. There's a lot of variables that come into play when it comes to doing a plan. But what I wanted to show you here is just Social Security and how big of a benefit this can make over the long term. So one thing before I wrap up, I want to show you the difference in Social Security you might receive by delaying. So I didn't do that. So let me do that really quickly here on this single client. So for this particular client, let's take a look here. And if the difference between claiming as early as possible and delaying till 70 would be about $200,000, $242,000 if they live till 90. If they waited till full retirement age versus 70, they would get an additional $113,000, $114,000. So again, these are big numbers. These are big numbers here. And this is real money that could help you pay your bills along the way. That could help you take less risk possibly with your investments and really help make sure that your retirement plan is more secure. So hopefully you found this interesting. Like I said, I want to do a couple of case studies. And then next week, I think we're going to talk about something that I find is just so important that I feel very few people have a good handle on, from what I've seen, is understanding retirement cash flow. So we're going to be diving into that next week and talk about that. But before we do, I'm going to see if there's any questions here before we wrap up. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat now. And if not, then I'm going to put my website up here. If you'd like to have a chat here, I'm going to put up my link here to my calendar page. So if you'd like to have a chat about your retirement and your overall situation and talk about your variables and see what it's looking like for you from a retirement plan's perspective, I'd love to speak with you. We offer complimentary consultation at keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk. If you go there, you will find our calendar page to be able to set up a call to discuss. Let's see if there's any questions here. And if not, then we're going to wrap up for today. That's all I'm seeing here. So, folks, I do appreciate you watching. I want to wish you a wonderful afternoon. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you next week, okay? Thanks again, and if you need any help, reach out, keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk. We'll see you then. Bye-bye now.